So thank you all so much for joining us for our second Research Computing and Data Lunch and Learn this for spring 2026. If you'd like to access our slides, we've got a Go link there, and I will put, if somebody can grab that and put that in the chat for Derek or Andy, that would also be helpful. If you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide, Josh. Yeah, so just to briefly, for folks who are unfamiliar with the Research Facilitation Service, just to briefly introduce ourselves, we are a collaboration on the part of the university libraries, the Office of Information Technology, and the Office of Research and Innovation. And we are designed to kind of act as a single point of contact or a front door for researchers who have questions about research computing and data services and support, both throughout the research lifecycle. So if you're unfamiliar with us, it may be because we are kind of slowly extending the service throughout campus. So we're currently formally active with the College of Sciences, College of Natural Resources, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Humanities and Social Sciences. And just this semester, we extended our service to the College of Education. That said, we're happy to help folks from throughout campus, and I think we've engaged with researchers from every one of the university colleges. So if you have a question, please feel free to reach out to us and ask, and we will help you as we are able. We are a free service for all NC State affiliates, so we don't cost anything for anybody who works and is associated in any way at NC State. We sort of prioritize our assistance for faculty, postdocs, and graduate students, but we know that there's not always a bright line between research and teaching. So as with everything else, if you have a question, please reach out to us and we'll do our best to either answer the question or put you in touch with somebody who can. And you can contact us via our website. We have a link right there, and we've got a little contact form. You fill that out, give us a little information about what you're working on, and we'll be back in touch either with an immediate response or to schedule a quick intake meeting to kind of talk about your project and what you're working on. Move to the next slide. So what is this series? We are hoping to make it into a series. This is, like I said, our second of these, but we wanted to provide a chance to kind of grow an NC State community around research computing and data to kind of help address common challenges. We wanted to give folks a venue and an opportunity to talk about, discuss, learn about new tools and technologies or approaches to, new approaches to old ones, new ways to leverage old technologies. And we wanted to give folks, we wanted to create an opportunity to hear from service providers, both at NC State and beyond. So that's folks, I'm seeing folks who work with the HPC team. I'm seeing some folks who work in college IT units, who work in OIT, in addition to researchers. So this is just an opportunity to kind of learn about what's going on in this space at NC State. And so today we are joined by Josh Thompson, who works with our virtual computing lab. And Josh is going to tell us a little bit about that. So if we want to advance to the next slide. So this is going to be kind of a brief introduction to remote or virtual computing with the virtual computing lab as a resource to use. So with that, I'll go ahead and give it over to Ford, who's going to talk a little bit about remote computing, and then Josh is going to launch into the VCL.
Great. Thanks, Maura. So it's great to see those poll results from you all. And I think this session will be useful both especially for those of you that have not been exposed a ton to VCL. You'll get to learn a lot about it and how it's useful. And if you are exposed to it at all, I think you'll be able to maybe get some misconceptions cleared up and learn about some interesting use cases. But first, I want to talk through a little bit brief background on remote computing and why you might want to use it in your workflow. So I think first and foremost, remote computing allows access on and off campus to people using a consistent computing environment. This can be really helpful for people in your workflows so that you don't need to be always using a dedicated workstation that's on campus or using for example, a personal machine that you're carrying back and forth. So that's very helpful. And one of the reasons for this is that the maintenance of this actual infrastructure gets offloaded from you, the user, so that whoever is providing the remote computing service can do that for you. So that's a big hurdle that you no longer have to deal with. And then another hurdle for some people using a remote setup is that they're not super familiar with a command line interface. And now a lot of remote computing setups enable a desktop interface, so that if that's something that's an impediment to you getting started and using some central resources, you can instead have an easier transition with a more similar interface to what you may have used previously through some graphical interface. Remote computing also makes access to some licensed software easy that can be difficult or expensive to provide to individual users. This way you can log in remotely to a computing setup that has that a license already set up for it. So that can be very helpful as well. And then finally, remote options, they can include a mixture of cloud and on-premise resources that can really be tailored to suit your needs depending on whatever those are. And now at NC State, there are two primary options that we often recommend for people to check out. One is the Virtual Computing Laboratory, which Josh will be diving into in the rest of the session. And there's also a national resource called Jetstream 2 via NSF Access. It serves as a different tool for remote computing. We'll also talk a little bit about that later on, but just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to that as well. But that's it from me. I'm going to go pass it over to Josh to get into VCL.
Okay, thanks, Ford. So what is the VCL? It's the Virtual Computing Lab is what VCL stands for. It's a cloud computing platform. We started it here at State in 2004 before the term cloud computing was coined. But that's what cloud computing turned out to be, is kind of what we had developed. It provides remote access to computing resources. Use of the resources may be time-based, which we call reservations in VCL, or demand-based, and that would be if you're using Azure Virtual Desktop through VCL. Users typically remotely connect to a VM using RDP, SSH, or a web client. RAM and CPU resources can be configured based on various use cases. And the default duration for users is 10 hours for when they make a reservation, but that can be configured to be much longer based on need. So on-premise versus cloud resources. On-premise, I usually say on-prem resources, sometimes we may call it traditional VCL. College of Engineering may say legacy VCL if you hear them mention that. So these are resources that are in NCSU data centers, and so it's hardware that we physically own. These are time-based reservations, so you go to the VCL site and say you want to use a VM or an image for some specified amount of time, and once that time limit's over, then the reservation goes away. These are dedicated resources, so when you make a reservation, you are getting that VM for you. And there's some ways to share it we'll talk about later, but primarily it's just for your use. You don't have to worry about other users logging in to that VM at the same time. And then it's a fresh install for each reservation, so it's the image. We create images, you make a reservation, it creates a new VM based on that image. When you finish with your reservation, that gets completely deleted. If someone else were to use the same image, they would get a fresh copy of it. Cloud resources, through VCL specifically, currently we provide access to Azure Virtual Desktop. This is a platform they have built on Azure Cloud. These are on-demand use, so it's resources that are already provisioned and running. And then you connect to it just whenever you need it. These resources are Windows only. They are shared. So they call them devices now in AVD. So each device is actually a pool of VMs. And when you connect to that device, you get connected to one of the VMs, and that VM may have other users logged into it at the same time. So you're sharing those resources as you use them. We try to scale things so that's not going to like slow you down, but it's possible that if somehow somebody was just really hammering a system, then it would be could get overloaded. These are powered on and off for scaling. So since they're in a public cloud and we have to pay for when they're running, we provision a bunch of those VMs in each pool or device, as they call it now. And just for cost purposes, we'll power them on and off based on how many people are logged in at a time. They're not regularly reinstalled. We only reinstall them either if we need more resources, more VMs in a pool, or if we redo the image that they're built off of, then we would deploy new systems at that time. So why would you use VCL? So on-demand virtual desktops. You run it when you need it. It's a dedicated use. You don't need to share a computer maybe with lab mates. You get that VM as for the duration of your reservation. They're always on and running, so if you primarily use a laptop and you were to try to run some simulations and you need to keep that running, you don't have the problem of, I need to change locations, close my laptop and walk away, and then it stops, could get interrupted and not start again correctly. You can just leave your stuff running here. If you're connecting via SSH, you may need to use something like Screen or Tmux, just to make sure that they still keep running if you disconnect from your SSH session, so that you can then connect back later and have your job still running. Install and use of software. It doesn't take up space on your computer. You can experiment with new things and try something out. If something gets messed up, you just delete the reservation and make another one. You can save images for future use, so you can install software, configure it just how you want it, and then save that, and then later you can make a reservation for that image that you've saved, that you've customized for your own use, or for use for teaching a class or something like that, and have everything set just as you want it. So these are university managed resources. I mentioned before that these are the hardware is stuff that we own, so you're not having to pay like per hour use kind of thing. So that cost is already covered by the university. Managed storage is available to them. You can connect your B drive, your NCSU drive, or you can also connect research storage to it. And these VMs, since they're in our data centers, also where our storage is, then they have very fast access to that storage, which is faster than trying to access storage or something from a home network. It's also faster than a cloud resource, something in Azure or Amazon, trying to connect back over our virtual network connection to those clouds. The network connections to the clouds have, or the various public clouds have limited bandwidth, because we have to pay for how big that pipe is, and so we're not going to pay for unlimited connections, so they're a little faster if you're connecting from within our own data centers. So
Gosh,
our flexible.
Quick. There's a question in the chat from Andreas.
Okay.
Oh, never mind. Which has been answered by your current slide.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. There.
The chat open so I can see it if needed. So generally, the max resources we offer to people are 16 cores and 128 gigs of RAM. There are two images. I think there may be a third one, just a different flavor of Linux or different version of Ubuntu. But everybody, students and faculty, have access to use those larger VMs. They may be a little bit limited on how long you can reserve them if you've been granted access to make really long reservations. I think they're limited to a max of like 30 days or something. Possibly we can give higher specs than that, but it requires some manual intervention and changing on our part. That's particularly could make those available during breaks when there's just a lot lower demand for resources, especially over the summer. We've had a few cases where we may grant somebody a VM with more RAM than that if they just have some really massive data set they need to work on. You can access them from anywhere, anywhere on the internet when you're traveling, just whatever. You can connect, and they can connect easily to university resources. I don't know if it's still the case, but I know there was a time where access to Google resources, I think, were blocked from China, and the recommended way to connect to those was to actually make a VCL reservation, connect to it, and then you could get to your Google stuff. There are just a few VMs we have with GPUs connected. Most of those have actually been purchased with academic funding, so they're primarily targeted for student use. But there are a few available. We've got 7 of them with the RTX 2080 Ti that are a little bit older, and then we have 4 with the L40S GPUs connected. Those L40S ones, we see pretty heavy usage of those. And because we have such a few quantity of them, reservations for those are limited to just a day or I think up to 3 days for the RTX ones. So then we thought we'd do a little demo for VCL. So we're going to go to the VCL site.
While Josh is getting that set up, Andrew, you want to ask your question?
Hi, Josh. So just to be clear, a user gets the full GPU, or is it virtualized into pieces and the users get pieces?
Full GPU. Yeah, we have not, actually we haven't made a way for users to be able to get slices of it. So you get the full GPU for those.
Thank you.
So you go to vcl.ntsu.edu, click on reservations. I'm going to specifically point you to the menu up here. You can click on this, but the theme for this site is going to be changing in the next few months, and this big banner at the top is going to go away. So click on that, then you're going to get hit with a login page. I've already logged into Shibboleth, so it just pushed me through. So once you get logged in, you're going to click the new reservation button. Whoops. Then you'll select an environment, duration, and then create a reservation. So we're going to click new reservation. I'm just going to go with what I've last used, which is Ubuntu 24. Based on your access, you have various levels of how long you can make the reservation. This is just a demo, so I'm going to go with 1 hour. Most users don't get prompted for that. I'm an admin, so I can see different revisions of images, but most people don't even see that. They just get whatever's flagged as the production revision. So this estimated time here, if you see estimated 1 minute remaining, that means you're getting a VM that's already been deployed with this image, and it's just doing a few things to kind of finish configuring it for you. If you get a reservation for a VM that hasn't been deployed yet, it could be like 3 to 4 minutes, something like that, for it to get deployed. Any questions while we're waiting for that to deploy? Or I guess some of you may be doing the same thing right now.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Just talking to some of our researchers earlier today, and they were talking about how if they're running something that, it could take maybe more than just a couple of hours, how would is that possible to utilize it more? Is it something that they, like a need basis, they talk to you about? Is that even possible?
So by default, all students get access to make reservations up to 10 hours. I think faculty and staff have longer than that. But if they need more than 10 hours, they can just send in a message to our support queue, or you can click help and documentation, email VCL support, and just ask for more. If we just get a request from a student asking for more, we're typically going to say, ask them, is this for academic or research purposes? And if so, please have your instructor or advisor just confirm that to us. That's just so we don't have lots of students saying, hey, I need to use it for 2 months, and they're just doing it for their own personal projects or whatever. sometimes if it's a personal project that makes a lot of sense, it's kind of related to their education, then we may even grant that too. But we just don't make it really long because people don't typically end their reservations when they're done with them. So we just don't want people making reservations for months, using it for a few days, and then just leaving it sitting there for a long time.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And then
So,
Josh, Dan has a quick question about giving sysadmins access to longer reservations on the behalf, Dan, I think on behalf of researchers, right? Or students.
I think so. Yeah, we have a way to grant admins access to then give people longer reservations as well. Yeah, that would just be a question, or you can just submit a ticket for that. That's done with user groups, so we would give you access to manage user groups, and then there's a specific permission we have to give you that allows you to control how long that user group can make reservations for. I think everybody that can create user groups can do that. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. So this page just keeps refreshing until if you have a pending reservation. So it kept doing that until it's ready. Then you click on the connect button when it's ready, and then it will show you information on how to connect to your reservation. So with Ubuntu, you can connect with both SSH and with RDP. I'm gonna go with RDP, and then I'll share that once that gets connected. So when you connect with RDP, it's going to download an RDP file. Let me switch what I'm sharing. I have trouble with Zoom finding what I want to share. Desktop. All right. So that's logging me into just a desktop for Ubuntu. Not a whole lot to show. It's a remote desktop. You can run whatever things you need to run on it. Sorry, I think my Zoom bar is covering the top. Terminal. Just do whatever you need to in it. You can disconnect from this and log in again, and everything that you had running will just show up there again. So I'm going to log out. All right, let me share my presentation again. Where did that go? All right, so then when you're done, delete. Please do remember to come back and delete your reservation. Make sure you're done with it. You don't have to really stress about it, but it's great if people delete them when they're done. And then the reservation goes away, and resources are available back to the general pool and VCL again. Any questions on that process? Okay. Oops. All right, so hang on 1 second. I need to close the door. It's a little loud in here.
I'll also emphasize that there's a lot of really good documentation on VCL's website, and if you have questions, you can always feel free to reach out to them or us. Yeah.
Where did the presentation go? All right, is that back?
Yep.
Okay. So some more information about reservations. So we talked about the duration. Do remember to select that, because if the default is 1 hour, if you're planning on using it longer than that, you don't want it to go away after an hour. Concurrent use, that's how many reservations you can have at a time. So there is a limit on that. I think students get 5 by default, and faculty staff might get 10. Again, that's a setting we can configure if for some reason you need more than that. We do have something called server reservations. There's a few extra things that can be done with those. So you can actually specify when it ends instead of having a duration. And then the biggest thing that's kind of neat with those is you can share them with other users. And there's 2 user groups you can specify to share with other users. One is the admin user group, and users if you share it with the admin user group, the other people in that group have full access to control the reservation within VCL. So like they can delete it, they can extend it to be longer. And then within the reservation, they have admin access, so they can get root, be admin in Windows. But then there's also what's called the access user group, and those users, they only see a connect button, and within the reservation, they don't get admin access. So both of those can be useful tools in how you might share a reservation with other people. So any faculty staff can create their own image. If a student needs to create an image, we can grant access to do that. Once it's created, it's very easy for us to share it with others. We can give sysadmins access as well to share to grant other people access to make to use to use images that they have created. Images can be based on Windows or Linux. A little bit more about Windows later. There's some licensing issues around that, but we have Windows 11, Windows Server, various flavors of Linux, Ubuntu, RHEL, Alma Linux. So you can build images based on any of those. We occasionally will get a request from somebody to use like kind of an appliance VM or image that's been created somewhere else. Those can kind of be difficult to incorporate into VCL based on how VCL manages reservations. Sometimes they don't work well together, so we don't prefer to do that. In some cases, we've been able to make it work okay. Root admin access is generally provided for on-prem images. There's an option to not grant that to users if there's some reason for not doing that. But generally, we grant it. Just gives users access to do more with their reservations if they need to. One note that's important to know, it is explained in the Connect dialog, but not everybody reads all the text in that. We use firewalls to control from where you can connect to your reservation, so it's not accessible from just anywhere on the internet. And so if you have been using a reservation, if you go somewhere else and you need to connect to that again, you're going to be firewalled from doing that. So you need to click on the connect button on the reservation page that we talked about before, just those connect buttons that show up. And then that will update the firewall so you can connect from your new location. So that's just something really important to make note of. It's also useful if you're having students. If you're using VCL as part of classroom instruction, it's useful to highlight that to your students just to make sure that they know that. I think I saw a hand from somebody.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Quick question. So if an admin spins up a server reservation, the users have root access by default. Is that correct?
Correct. Again, unless it's a reservation or it's an image where we've disabled that. So an example would be the HPC image. Users do not get admin access in that. In that case, they wouldn't. Well, I say by default, but it just depends on which user group you share them as. So if you set the user group as the access user group, then they wouldn't get admin access. If you set it as the admin user group, they would get access. So I'll actually show that real fast. So edit. So it's these two things that I'm talking about. So if you select the group here, they get admin rights. If you select it here, they do not get admin rights. Here you can actually see an example. This reservation is shared with me using the access user group. So I only see this connect button. Any of the other ones are either mine or they're shared with me using the admin user group. Does that answer your question?
Josh, I don't know if we had it anywhere else, but do you want to mention reservation timeouts also, particularly related to Andreas' question where you need something to run for a long time?
Okay.
24
So
hours.
there, yeah, that's not. I don't have that mentioned in the slides, and then actually have to go look at what we have set now. I think we've largely disabled them, but there can be some timeouts. There's 3 of them. So when you make a reservation, you have that pending, and then a connect button shows up. That one, I believe, is still there, and I think you have 30 minutes, it might be up to an hour now, to click the connect button. And if you don't within that amount of time, then the reservation is going to time out, just so the resources aren't sitting there unused for a long time. So after you've clicked connect, there's another timeout for you to actually log into the reservation, at which point it's considered an in-use reservation. And I believe we may have disabled that one. If we haven't, it's going to be something like 30 minutes to an hour. And then once you've logged into the reservation, if you disconnect, I think that's also disabled. Sorry, I should have looked all these up beforehand. But if you disconnect from it, it could time you out after a certain period of time, so that it's just not sitting there forever unused. A caveat to that is if the reservation is more than 24 hours, if you disconnect from it, it's never going to time out. And the thinking there was we needed some kind of time delineation of presumably somebody's going to make this reservation for some amount of time, at which point they're assumed to be running long things on it and they don't want it to time out. And we just picked 24 hours as that because we assume nobody's going to be doing an all-nighter using a reservation for 24 hours or more without constantly using it. If you need to know those timeouts, you can contact us for a follow-up. But like I say, I think most of them are disabled. Okay, we covered everything there. So a few misconceptions. We've kind of alluded to some of these, but sometimes people think, well, I don't want to use it in a VCL because I can only use it for a few hours at a time. So 10 hours is the default for students, but much more can be allowed as needed. Sometimes people can be kind of scared away from creating a custom image because they think that sounds complicated. It's really as simple as make a reservation, log into it, install software just like you would on your own computer, and then tell VCL that you want to create a new image. That process is you go back to the site, more options, end reservation, and create image, and then you'll get a little box that steps you through the process. It's really easy to create new images. Sometimes we get reports of VCL is slow, and typically that's because either somebody's trying to do something really graphically intense, so you just have a lot of traffic traveling back and forth over your network connection, And things that are really chatty can cause a problem a little bit. If it's not something super graphically intense, it usually is pretty responsive. And then if for some reason you're connected over a very slow network connection, then it's probably going to be a little bit slow. Jonathan, go ahead. So you have a question?
Thank you. The create a new image and save it for later, is that automatically enabled for all users, or do we need to reach out to you to enable that option?
That is enabled for faculty and staff by default. If a student needs to do it, then they'll need to reach out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So there's typically 3 ways to log into a reservation, and that's communicated to you when you click connect, and that dialog pops up with information on how to connect. So remote desktop, you get that full desktop as we saw in the demo. That's available for Windows, and most, maybe all of our Linux-based images have that available now. There's also SSH. That's going to be just a command line interface, and that's only available for Linux. And then there's a web client when you're connecting with AVD. And then with AVD, you don't have the other options. You just go through that web client, and that gives you a full desktop that's actually within your browser. We do have the potential for other methods. That's something that can be kind of custom done, and things can be displayed in that connect dialog box, but those are the main ways people connect. Jonathan, did you have another question, or just need to clear your hand raise?
I have no further questions.
Okay.
We do have another question in chat, though.
Okay. My chat went away. Pulling that back up. So the question in the chat, I'll make a new reservation. What are you actually going to the VCL site and saying new reservation, or are you talking about making a second connection to the reservation that you already have?
Yeah, I was the person who asked a question. So what I did was I go to VCL and then I did the new reservation. Is that not how you're supposed to do it?
You're saying you click the new reservation button here?
Yes.
And when you do that, it's telling you already have a reservation?
No, so when I log in, so when I hit connect to my environment,
okay.
The original environment gave me a message. Gave me the message that I had been disconnected because another connection was made.
Okay, so that's something that was helpful to clarify. So this is a reservation, and that has a VM that was deployed that I connect to. So when I talk about you can make more than one reservation, that would be this kind of list of things here. So if you're connecting with RDP to a Windows reservation, I'm not sure. Linux may actually allow you to connect multiple times, but that's going to be a second connection to the same reservation. And Windows does not allow you to do that. Like I said, Linux might allow you to have more than one. But what you're talking about is actually a second connection to the same reservation, rather than making a second reservation and connecting to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Can you maybe I missed this earlier, but can you kind of walk me through how to do the separate connection again, please?
So that would be a second reservation. So
the second reservation.
Click on the new reservation button, make another reservation for that image or another image. Click create reservation, and then it's going to give you another one in your list of reservations that you would connect to. Like that. Does that make sense?
Let me see. I'm kind of working on it. do I need to choose a totally different environment, or can I choose the same environment?
You can, either one. You can choose the same one or a different one, because that's going to be another reservation. It's a completely different VM that you're then connecting to and doing whatever you want to on it.
Okay, so
think of it as like two different lab computers that you're physically walking up to do two different things.
Right, yes.
All right. So creating an image. So I just touched on that. It's very easy to do that. Then you have this custom image that you can use later, or you can share with other people for them to make reservations to use later as well. So again, all faculty and staff have access to do that by default. We can grant students access to do that as needed. If it helps you, it may be useful to just think of it as a snapshot. That's kind of a term people are a little bit more familiar with. And then just kind of think of it as a simple thing to do. So the steps to do it, we kind of covered a little bit, but you create a reservation, you'll connect to it, install your software, upload data to it, configure the software how you want it, and then you just go to select more options, end reservation, and create image. And then that steps you through the process to create a new one. And then once it's been created, we can assist you in granting other users access to make reservations for it. And as I alluded to earlier, we can also give sysadmins access to do that as well. So if you're a sysadmin for a college or a department, we can give you access to manage who has access to the images that you're creating. I said, did you say if students are able to use remote desktop or not? Anybody can use remote desktop to connect to a Windows or Linux reservation. It's possible, Jeff, maybe you saw a Linux image in the past where we had not enabled remote desktop, but that's enabled now.
Yeah, I think this goes back to several years. We were going to have to pay Microsoft for students to be able to use remote desktop, and so we did not do that, but it sounds like maybe that's changed.
Okay, so we will get to that a little bit later. That is that's remote desktop for Windows, and there is a licensing issue there that we'll get to a little bit later toward when we talk about AVD a little bit more.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So some great things for making an image. You can grant, or it's great for customizing software, so that it's exactly how you want it, and you can come back to that each time. It's also great if you want to build an image for a class so that all of your students can make a reservation and see an environment that's set up exactly the same way. We've had some classes use that. That can be very useful for them because they can install the software, they could do something like a specific data set, and have everything ready so that in a class session they can have all the students in the class make a reservation and everybody's seeing exactly the same thing. A little bit more on using VCL, so some use cases. What we initially created VCL for was just to make a reservation, to get access to software to use remotely, to do project and homework assignments just for a few hours, and then throw it away when you're done. Somebody else can use it. You can also install and configure server software, web server, database server, whatever, for learning to use things like that can be accessed over the internet. You can use it to run a job that takes a few days to complete. You can even do machine learning with a GPU. You can use it as a test system that you want to test doing whatever you want to do and then throw it away when you're done. If you get a link in an email and you're like, I'm not sure if that's something I should click on or not, you can make a reservation in VCL, open the link. It's not going to mess up your computer if it's bad. I don't recommend clicking on ones that you know are bad, but if you're not sure and you need to test it, that's an easy way to do that. You can use it during class sessions if you want all of your students to see a similar image that's all the same. If you do that, we do ask that you would make something called a block allocation request. So if you go to Manage, block allocations, your interface will look a little bit different because I manage them. There's an interface for just requesting them. But if you would go there, that allows us to configure things so that they're ready when you make or when your class uses VCL. That's really important if you are using AVD in your class because of the scaling that we do. That scaling checks every 5 minutes. So if 30 people log into AVD within 5 minutes, they're going to all get stacked up on just 1 or 2 VMs, and it's going to be a terrible experience for you and your students. So do remember that if you want to use it in class. It can be a great resource, especially if you let us know ahead of time. Some edge use cases that are not as common that we think are pretty cool. So ArcGIS is a mapping type software that's used for large-scale mapping stuff and doing custom maps for various things. It is used in some of the GIS courses, and I have been told by the instructors of those courses that they have gone to conferences where people have heard what we do with this, using it in VCL, and say, nobody else has this. So this is actually a value add to these majors at NC State that you can't get anywhere else. So they make server reservations, they learn to install ArcGIS. It's actually a Windows type software, and they purchase the licensing needed for that. And users learn to run ArcGIS servers that they would run in industry, and actually have projects where they partner with industry partners that they wouldn't get hands-on experience to do anywhere else. We have some courses in computer science where they actually modify the process scheduler within the OS, so they can do that, and if they completely mess it up, they can delete it and make another reservation. So you can do things that are actually that in depth where you would be modifying the kernel of Linux. You can do collaborative work, reservations, the server reservations we talked about that can be shared among multiple people. We have the ability that if you could install licensed software that may only be licensed for 5 specific users, and we can limit it to just those users. We can also do things like only 10 users are allowed to use it, but you only have 3 licenses for it. So we can make it so only those 10 people can access it, but only 3 concurrent reservations for that image could be made at the same time. There's also some use cases we've had of a little bit more lockdown environment. We are not NIST 800-171 compliant, but we can do some things for some limitations. There was a data set used in CHAS from some medical data from UNC where there were some controls that said the data set was not allowed to be downloaded by the people using it. So we set up a way in VCL where the users could interact with it from their VCL reservation, but there was no way that they could download it to their own computer. And we're open to other ideas. It's a very flexible platform. If you think, hey, maybe I could do that in VCL, feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss it.
Josh, in the interest of time, since we only have a couple minutes left, maybe we can skip down to getting support for work on VCL, and then Andrew has a question too. So,
okay, real quick, I'm going to talk about AVD and the VDA license, just since Jeff brought that up earlier. So our Windows workloads mainly got pushed to AVD because Microsoft literally told us that they were increasing the cost of the license so that we'd have to use their cloud platform. So they made the AVD license cost expensive enough that we can't just buy it for all students, which is what we used to do. So we talked about AVD earlier, that it's a shared platform. So that's where the dominant use of Windows is now. The AVD license can still be purchased for students to use on-prem. Faculty and staff are covered by a bulk license, so all faculty and staff can still use Windows remotely and VCL on-prem. But if a student needs to use it, then an AVD license needs to be purchased for them. And that is currently, or at least as of last summer, that was $22.11 per user per year. Containers we might be able to touch on. support for VCL. VCL was primarily developed as a self-service model that just allowed users to come use it as needed. So we designed it so we would not need a lot of staff support for it. So because of that, we don't have a lot of staff time to help with things you may be doing within VCL. If you have any issues with using VCL, the website, reservations getting deployed, connecting to reservations, things like that, we're staffed for that. But if you're trying to install and configure software, things like that, we don't quite have as much time for. We'll provide it where we can, but that's a little harder. RFS can provide some additional support for research-related use of VCL. That live.ncsu.edu/RFS/contact us would be the best way to reach out to them. I showed earlier just the way to get to help email VCL support. You can also send an email to VCL_help@ncsu.edu. I think on the slide somewhere there's also a link to emailing the general support queue for help at NC State. If you use the VCL_help, that's going to come straight to our support queue. If you use the general one, it's going to go to the help desk, and if they're super slammed with stuff, it could take a while for that to get moved to us. So you'll get a little bit faster support if you go to VCL_help. We are not staffed for 24/7 support, so business work hours mainly is when we will provide support. If the system crashes or something like that, we have people on call to deal with that. But general questions about VCL is just normal business hours. VMs and VCL are not backed up. It's a very it's designed as a low-cost model. So any data you have on there, you want to make sure you're regularly copying to somewhere else, such as research storage or your B drive, or copying it off to your own computer or Google Drive or something like that. We can go ahead and move to that if you want.
Yeah, sure. So we added this slide. I don't think we have time to touch on it today, but if you are interested in other resources that can sort of have a similar functionality to VCL, please feel free to reach out to the RFS, and we're happy to talk about any of these.
In particular, if you run into any hard limits with your research functioning on what's available via VCL, then there are some similar alternatives that can be useful.
I'm going to go back to containers really fast,
Sure.
just because. So we are developing support to make reservations for containers in VCL. They'll be run on Kubernetes. We would love to partner with anybody that's interested in using that, just because we don't have any direct use cases right now for how people would use that. So that would help us in our development if we had somebody reach out to us to say, hey, I'd like to use it in this way. That would kind of give us some things to make sure that would work. You can use containers right now, but you have to make a reservation for a VM and set everything up by yourself.
Yeah, and so we had some questions and discussion for you all, but we have run out of time. So I want to make sure that any other questions. So Jonathan had a quick question about by default when creating a new image, only you have access to it. Is that correct, Josh?
Yep, that is correct. That's just because we don't want just whoever to automatically have access to this image you may have created that should have limited access. But yeah, once you have created your image, probably best just to reach out to us. If you're a sysadmin that's worked with us, you've gone through the process with us of knowing how to grant access to other people. If you need to do that as a sysadmin and you haven't done that yet, please reach out. But for faculty using it, definitely easiest just to reach out to us.
Okay. And then I think, Andrew, I saw that you had your hand up for one more question. I don't know if that got answered or if you still wanted to ask, or if anybody else has one additional quick question in the time we have remaining.
Josh, did you all file for IPs for this in 2004 or any time?
You mean like intellectual property protection
Yes.
kind of stuff? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
We actually open sourced it in 2008 through the Apache Software Foundation. So it is an open source project. We have not gotten a release out in a few years. Or actually, I think we got a bug fix release out maybe last year, but not feature release in a long time. But there are other institutions that are using Apache VCL. There was a time when, before cloud computing, the public clouds were so big that there were quite a number of places that were using it for use for their own institutions. It was pretty cool.
Okay. Well, with the remaining seconds we have, if you all could please fill out our Lunch and Learn evaluation form. This really helps us to plan and improve these sessions. We very much appreciate you taking the time, and I want to give a round of applause to Josh also for talking us through all of this wonderful content about VCL. We got a little ambitious this time. We'll better right size it next time.